Um, some of the armed wings decide to actually sign an agreement to join hands as armed force. They are openly talking about being more aggressive to actually finally have some results. What is your position on their new strategy?
I'm sorry, what do you mean? More aggressive about what?
No, I mean, in approach to reach their final goal or have more autonomy or more independence.
Oh.
They say the dialogue is not really working.
Well, that is not our fault. We have always worked for dialogue. I think this is because just prior to the elections, the government put a lot of pressure on the ceasefire groups to join the border guards. And some of the ceasefire groups refused because they said that the understanding when they agreed to the ceasefire was that the political questions would be settled after a new government had come into power, that political questions would be settled in a political way, that is to say, through negotiation. But because the SPDC changed its mind and decided to pressure the groups into joining the border guards, into in effect, completely surrendering to the wishes of the SPDC, all these tensions have come about. And this is why there is now the possibility of hostilities breaking out along the frontier. And that, of course, is another very, very strong piece of evidence that we need to work for national reconciliation.
Exactly. Are you worried that the violence might erupt soon and in bigger waves? What are you planning to do to
I don't know how soon, but there's always a possibility of hostilities breaking out along the frontier, especially in the KIO area, the Wa area, some of the Shan areas where the ceasefire groups are strong.
How important actually is their strategy and their position? As you said, is only, they are such an important part of Myanmar. I mean, things have to work with them as well, right?
Of course it's important, because in the end we cannot survive as a nation unless there's unity within. A house divided cannot stand, it will fall apart. So we have to recognize the importance of the ethnic groups to the future of our country.
I wanted to talk, in the last few days there were a lot of talks about sanction. The NLD published a report that actually stated quite clearly that it's too early to actually lift them, but it was also called to have more discussion about it with the West. What kind of discussion are you, interested in?
Well, I did say, we did spell it out quite clearly there as to when, how and under what conditions sanctions should be lifted. This is what we want to discuss. And we also suggested that a qualified team of professionals should look into the effects of sanctions so that this will provide a basis for these discussions.
What you said about sanction might actually anger the government. Are you afraid that they might arrest you again?
Well, they're very fond of arresting people, but so I can't say that they will not arrest me again. But on the other hand, of course, if they arrest me or if they arrest other members of the parties of our NLD now, it will be a proof that this government is no different from the old government.
You also talk about investment opportunity in Burma. You address the business.
Misunderstanding about what I had said at Davos. It's spelled out in our paper on sanctions that we are aiming the idea of ethical investment at those who have already invested in Burma or who have already decided to invest in Burma. We're not really depend on the present political process to achieve democratization, and that it needs to be all-inclusive, which is what we said in our paper on sanctions.
So there are sanctions, there are ethnic groups, there are so many things that people expect you to do something on. What are your main projects for the near future?
Unity. This is why we have started this network for democracy in Burma, and the network is working very well. We have a lot of young people in it, and we have groups and individuals who are all doing small humanitarian projects on their own, all contributing in their way towards a stronger civil society. And by creating a network and by linking up all these people and groups who want to strengthen civil society, some of them don't even understand what civil society means, but in fact what they are doing is strengthening civil society. And so by creating such a network, our aim of bringing democratization to Burma. Democratization for us means democratic institutions and the guarantee of human rights. So our aim would be better and realized better and faster with this kind of network.
You were talking about the power of people outside the government. How did you feel when you saw the people protesting in Tunisia or in Egypt now? The power of people.
This is the sort of thing that happens in all dictatorships. People do not like oppression. Of course, fear is a human reaction, and if a government is very powerful and if a government is very brutal, then people are crushed and they become very quiescent. But this cannot last forever, because it is not human nature to love oppression.
What do you think Myanmar can learn from what's happening now in the Middle East? I mean, there is this domino effect, which is also quite interesting as well.
We're studying the situation with interest, but of course you must understand that it's not quite the same. For example, what we have noticed is that the main difference between Egypt and Burma is that the Egyptian army is not shooting at its people, whereas the army did shoot our people down. That makes a very, very great difference. So what interests me is, why is the Egyptian army so much more patriotic, truly patriotic? Because I think patriotism involves love for the people, not just for a country in the abstract.
For many people in your country, for so many people in your country, obviously you are the only hope, and people were so happy when you finally were released, and now that you are released, how do you cope with such a big expectation?
By trying to bring up younger people who can take over part of my responsibilities as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. You have to add something? I think I forgot.
To ask something like how she wants, how she likes to, or how would you like to that foreign governments deal with this government?
Well, all right. The most important thing, I think, is a coordinated approach. Especially, I would like to see that within the EU, because that leaves out Switzerland in a way. But in any case, Germany is a very, very important member of the EU, and we would like a strong and united EU reaction, asking for an all-inclusive political process, because as I said earlier, we have chosen to work outside Parliament, and we should have the right to do so. I think to try to force people to tread the very, very narrow path that is offered by these elected assemblies is not the way to democratization. So we want the European Union to be united on this, and we would like to have discussions with the EU as we laid out in our paper on sanctions.
You already met some people from the international community. Were you satisfied with the dialogue that you had with them? I mean, obviously unity...
Well, some dialogues were more satisfactory than others. I mean, this is how it goes. This is the reality of things. I think we would like the EU to be more united in their attitude towards Burma.
Do you feel that, obviously, until you were under house arrest, the international community were really watching Burma and trying to keep the pressure to release you? Are you afraid that now that you are free, they might release a little bit the pressure on the government?
I'm not afraid, but this is a possibility that we have to look at and we have to guard against, because I think people should not forget that there are over 2,000 political prisoners still in Burma. And releasing me, it does not really mean anything when you consider that there are more than 2,000 still in prison. And also, it must be remembered that I was released simply because I had come to the end of my prison term.
Do you feel watched? Do you feel followed in every movement that you do? Do you think you still represent the biggest threat for the government?
I never think about these things. I just go about my work. I don't think about whether I'm being watched or whether there's somebody around the corner. Probably there are. I understand that the tea shop opposite is the headquarters of the local of our local watchers, if you like. But I don't keep that in mind.
Well, it was a great honor meeting you. Thank you for talking to us.
Well, it was a great pleasure talking to you, and I hope that the people of Germany especially will make sure that Germany plays a strong role in the EU to ask for an all-inclusive political process in Burma, and to recognize that the time is not right yet to lift sanctions, because that will be seen as a reward. A reward for what? I would like to ask. What are they going to reward Burma for? For the most narrow democratization, so-called, a parody of democratization that is possible? Or are they going to reward it just because one prisoner out of more than 2,000 has been released because she has come to the end of her prison term? I do not think that these are sufficient reasons for rewarding anybody at all.